Good luck, the host snickered as the elderly man approached the piano. The producers had brought him on the show to mock him, certain he'd embarrass himself. What they didn't know was that William Harrison, once a piano prodigy, was about to get the performance of a lifetime. Colonel William Bill Harrison carefully arranged his small collection of framed photographs on the mantelpiece of his modest apartment. At 73, his hands moved with surprising grace, the same delicate precision that once made them dance across piano keys. One photo showed a young man in uniform receiving a medal. Another captured him at a military band performance decades ago. His apartment was simple but comfortable, filled with mementos of a life well lived, though perhaps not the life he had once imagined. A shadow box displaying his military decorations hung beside his college diploma. In the corner of his living room sat an upright piano. It was showing signs of age but clearly well maintained. Every morning, like clockwork, William would sit at this piano and play for an hour before starting his day. It was his ritual, his moment of peace, a connection to the dreams of his youth. "Morning, old friend," he whispered, running his fingers lightly over the keys. Despite his age, William maintained the straight posture and disciplined demeanor of his military years. His silver hair was neatly trimmed, his clothes modest but immaculately pressed. The neighborhood children called him the Colonel, a title he carried with quiet pride after 30 years of service. His blue eyes, still sharp and observant, reflected a lifetime of experiences, from the concert halls of his youth to the jungles of Vietnam, and now to the peaceful routine of retirement. The military had shaped him, given him structure and purpose, but music had always been his true companion, the constant through all of life's campaigns and battles. 60 years earlier, a teenage William had been the talk of his hometown, a genuine musical prodigy who could play Chopin with the emotional depth of someone 3 times his age. His music teacher had called him once in a generation, promising him a future at the finest conservatories in the country. But the Vietnam War and a strong sense of duty had redirected his path. William enlisted, surprising everyone who expected him to pursue music. "I'll return to the piano after serving," he'd said. Recognizing his talent, the military assigned him to the Army Band, where he performed for troops and dignitaries alike. What was supposed to be a short detour became a lifelong career. He rose through the ranks, eventually earning his colonel's eagles, his piano playing limited to officers' clubs and special ceremonies. The rigorous discipline of military life suited him, but the virtuoso inside never disappeared, merely adapted. After retiring from service, financial constraints prevented him from pursuing a professional music career so late in life. He worked as a security consultant for a while, then fully retired on his military pension. Marriage came and went. His wife, Sarah, had passed 10 years ago. Children never arrived, but through it all, his piano remained his constant companion. He never stopped playing, even if the grand stages and concert halls remained dreams unrealized. These days, William played at the local community center twice a week, offering free lessons to neighborhood children and veterans who couldn't afford formal training. The dual identity of disciplined military man and sensitive musician sometimes confused people, but to William, they were simply different aspects of the same devoted soul. Mark Davenport had been producing America's Got Talent Tonight for 7 seasons. While not the most watched talent competition, the show had carved out a comfortable niche in evening television, particularly among older viewers. At 42, Mark considered himself a pragmatist. Television was a business, and his job was to deliver ratings. "What do we have lined up for next week's show?" he asked, scanning the list of contestants during production meeting. The usual mix stared back at him. Aspiring singers, dance troupes, the occasional novelty act. Same old," replied Sarah, his assistant producer. "We need something different. Viewers are getting bored with the predictable acts." Mark drummed his fingers on the table. "We need something that'll get people talking. Social media buzz. Water cooler conversations." It was at that exact moment that Mark remembered the elderly man he'd spotted playing piano at Riverside Community Center last week. He had stopped by to pick up his nephew from a basketball program and heard music coming from a small room down the hall. The old man had been playing something simple, a basic tune for what appeared to be a children's lesson. Nothing extraordinary, but there was something about his ramrod straight posture that struck Mark as camera-worthy. "I've got it," Mark said, straightening up. "I saw this elderly veteran playing piano at a community center. He's got the perfect look, military haircut, stiff posture. The viewers will expect something regimented, maybe a simple march." Sarah raised an eyebrow. "So what's the angle?" "The unexpected. We present him like he's going to play something basic. Maybe even have Bradley make a few gentle jokes about old soldiers. The audience will love it." The following Tuesday afternoon found William closing the lid on the piano at the community center. His small group of students had just left, backpacks bouncing as they raced toward waiting parents. Teaching brought him joy, a way to keep music alive in his life, while passing on his knowledge to a new generation. He was gathering his sheet music when an unfamiliar voice called out, "Colonel Harrison?" William looked up to see a well-dressed younger woman with a tablet in hand. He straightened instinctively, years of military protocol embedded in his muscles. "Yes, I'm William Harrison," he replied with a nod. The woman smiled brightly, extended her hand. "I'm Sarah Chun from America's Got Talent tonight. We're interested in having you appear on our show next week." William's hand stilled on his music sheets. "I beg your pardon?" Sarah launched into her well-rehearsed pitch. "Our producer saw you playing last week and was very impressed with your presence. We're doing a special segment highlighting talented veterans, and we think you'd be perfect." "There must be some mistake," William said, shaking his head. "I'm just a piano teacher. I play for these children and occasionally at the Veterans Association. I'm hardly television material." "That's exactly what makes you perfect," Sarah insisted. "You represent everyday Americans who've served their country and kept music in their lives. Our viewers will love your authenticity." William hesitated. Television had never been part of his life plan. The thought of performing in front of cameras and a studio audience made his stomach tighten. And yet, a small voice inside whispered of opportunity, of the chance to play for an audience larger than he'd ever imagined. His old piano at home needed repairs. The G above middle C had been sticking lately, and the repair costs had seemed out of reach until now. The television studio was a maze of cables, equipment, and harried staff members speaking into headsets. William, dressed in his best navy blazer with a small American flag pin on the lapel, moved through the chaos with the calm precision of a man accustomed to navigating far worse conditions. A production assistant, a young man with a clipboard who'd introduced himself as Kevin, led him through the backstage area. "Through here, Colonel," Kevin said, holding open a door marked Green Room. The space was unexpectedly comfortable. Sofas, snacks, a small refrigerator stocked with drinks. But William couldn't help noticing he was the only contestant present. "Where are the other performers?" he asked. Kevin checked his clipboard. "Oh, you're in a special segment. The others are in a different preparation area." Before he could inquire further, the door opened and Mark Davenport strode in, his confident smile not quite reaching his eyes. "Colonel Harrison, so glad you could join us. I'm Mark, executive producer." He shook William's hand firmly. "All set for your big moment?" "I believe so," William replied, straightening his already impeccable posture. As the makeup artist applied powder to minimize the shine on William's forehead, he overheard a conversation just outside the partially open door. "Is the old soldier still up for this?" A male voice, presumably the host, Bradley Walker, asked. Mark's voice responded, "Absolutely. Audience is perfect tonight, too. Lots of younger people. The contrast will be even better than I hoped." "And he has no idea?" Bradley's voice trailed off into a chuckle. "None. Just remember to play it up a bit before he starts. Set the tone." A cold feeling settled in William's stomach, but his face remained impassive. Decades of military discipline serving him well. The spotlights felt warm on William's skin as he stood center stage beside Bradley. The massive grand piano waited just a few feet away. The audience's polite applause had already died down, replaced by a few scattered whispers and the distinct feeling of people waiting for something to be over before the next, more exciting act began. "So, Colonel Harrison," Bradley's voice boomed to the theater, "I understand you serve our country for 30 years? "Yes, sir. Army. Vietnam through Desert Storm." William replied, his voice steady despite the cameras and the sea of faces before him. That's quite a career, Bradley nodded respectfully before pivoting. And what will you be playing for us tonight? The Stars and Stripes Forever? The army goes rolling along. More laughter, louder this time. William noticed a few audience members already smirking. Phones raised to capture what they anticipated would be a viral moment. An elderly veteran fumbling through a simple patriotic tune. Actually, William said calmly, I'll be playing Franz Liszt's La Campanella. Bradley's practiced smile faltered for just a moment. Clearly, he'd been briefed to expect something much simpler. From the corner of his eye, William saw Mark step forward in the wings, his brow furrowed. La Campa what now? Bradley recovered quickly, playing up his confusion for comedy. Sounds fancy. Is that like Twinkle Twinkle Little Star in Italian? The audience laughed again, and William smiled politely. Not exactly. It's considered one of the most difficult pieces in the piano repertoire. As Bradley guided him to the piano, he leaned in, speaking quietly so only William could hear. Maybe start with something easier. No need to put yourself on the spot. I know exactly what I'm doing, William replied softly, his eyes meeting Bradley's with the quiet authority of a man who commanded troops in combat. William adjusted the bench, taking his time, aware of the shifting atmosphere in the theater as people grew restless. Some were already looking at their phones, others whispering to their neighbors. He caught Mark's eye offstage. The producer was speaking urgently into his headset, perhaps already planning how to cut his segment short when he inevitably struggled with the demanding piece. He placed his hands on the keys, feeling the cool ivory beneath his fingertips. For a moment, he closed his eyes, shutting out the lights, the cameras, the doubtful faces. In that brief darkness, he was 18 again, full of promise and possibility, before duty called him away. When he opened his eyes, William was no longer nervous. He was no longer the elderly veteran they expected to embarrass himself. He was simply a musician about to play. His fingers struck the first notes of the delicate, sparkling introduction to La Campanella, light, precise, and perfectly controlled. Each crystalline note hung in the air with bell-like clarity, exactly as Liszt had intended. In the front row, a young woman's jaw dropped slightly. Backstage, Mark froze mid-sentence, his hand still raised with instructions to prepare for a quick transition. And William, feeling the familiar rush that came only from making music, allowed himself a small smile as his hands began to move faster, the piece's notorious technical demands unfurling before him like an old friend coming to visit after long absence. As his fingers flew across the keys with astonishing agility, the atmosphere in the theater transformed. The initial notes had captured attention. Now, as he navigated the piece's incredibly difficult leaps and rapid-fire repetitions, he commanded it completely. His military training showed in his focus, his discipline, his absolute precision. But the emotion in his playing came from someplace deeper, someplace purely human. As William approached the piece's thunderous conclusion, his hands became a blur across the keyboard. The final series of ascending runs, punctuated by powerful chords, built to a climax that utilized a full range of piano. His frame, still strong despite his age, contained a surprising power as he delivered the piece's triumphant final notes. The last chord resonated through the theater, hanging in the air for what seemed like an eternity. William held his hands above the keys, allowing the sound to fade naturally, his posture still perfect. Then silence. For 3 heartbeats, no one moved, no one breathed. The silence shattered as the theater erupted. People leapt to their feet, applause thundering through the space. Cheers and whistles joined the cacophony of clapping hands. In the front row, a young classical music student had tears streaming down her face. William remained seated for a moment, slightly overwhelmed by the response. Then, with the same careful dignity with which he'd entered, he rose from the bench and turned to face the audience. He offered a small, precise bow, the gesture of a true performer acknowledging appreciation. Bradley practically bounded onto stage, his professional demeanor temporarily abandoned in genuine excitement. "Colonel William Harrison, ladies and gentlemen," he shouted over the applause, his arm extended toward William in a gesture that was no longer condescending, but genuinely reverential. The head judge, a renowned music producer, leaned forward. Colonel Harrison, in 20 years of judging talent, I have rarely seen such mastery. Your technique is impeccable, but more importantly, you played with your soul. May I ask why you never pursued a professional career? William's smile turned wistful. I chose to serve my country. Different stage, different uniform, but still a worthy performance. Later, as William prepared to leave, a line of people waited to speak with him. Fellow contestants, crew members, audience members who had lingered after the show. A young man in a military uniform approached, respectfully standing at attention until William noticed him. "Sir, I'm a pianist of the Army Band," he said. "What you did tonight, it means something. Most people see us soldiers as one-dimensional. You showed them we contain multitudes." William nodded, understanding completely. "We're trained to be precise, disciplined, focused, all qualities that serve music as well as they serve the military." A young girl, perhaps 12, approached shyly with a program for William to sign. "I play piano too," she said. "My teacher says I should quit and focus on sports instead, but after seeing you tonight, I'm gonna keep practicing no matter what anyone says." William signed the program, then gently put his hand on the girl's shoulder. "Remember, young lady, it's never about proving others wrong. It's about proving yourself right." The head judge approached with his business card. "The Philharmonic is doing a special performance honoring veterans next month. We'd be honored if you consider being our featured soloist." As William walked toward the exit, Sarah from production caught up with him. "Colonel, I have to apologize. I didn't know." William smiled kindly. "Few people do, young lady. We all contain surprises, if others take the time to look beyond the surface." In the parking lot, William paused to look up at the stars. Life was full of choices, paths taken and not taken. Tonight, for a brief moment, he had glimpsed a road not traveled, and found peace in knowing both journeys had value. Colonel Harrison reminds us all that talent doesn't fade with age, and that we should never judge others by appearance. If you enjoyed this story, please comment below with someone who surprised you by defying stereotypes. Respect everyone's hidden talents.